Hey folks, it's Marcel, and today I thought we could talk about learning some bluegrass vocal melodies by ear. So a lot of times I hear people talking about how taking breaks over fiddle tunes is a lot easier because you get to learn all those songs specifically from arrangements probably. But if you're taking breaks over singing songs, it's a lot harder because you can't find breaks for those particular songs, or maybe you're flying by the seat of your pants at a jam, you've never heard this song, and it can mean that you're completely alone. Alone. I'm going to try to fix that for you by showing you an easy way that I learn melodies by ear. Bluegrass melodies are simple and they're generally pentatonic, so that's not the problem. What's hard is our instrument. So one of the tough things about learning melodies by ear and trying to play breaks off them is you have to decide where you're going to play that melody. In fact, there's 7 Gs from open to 12th fret on the guitar. They span 3 different octaves. The other problem is that the pentatonic scale is kind of split into 2 different sections. It starts with 3 diatonically consecutive notes. Then there's a gap, and there's 2 more diatonically consecutive notes. But with the scale laid out like we all first learned it, you get 2 notes per string, and it's really hard to tell where you are at all. In fact, that's one of the biggest problems. Playing a 5-note scale in 2-note groupings isn't intuitive at all. It's horrible. What is intuitive and easy is something I like to call the Big Dipper shape. As I said before, the pentatonic scale is made up of a group of 3 consecutive notes and a group of 2 consecutive notes. Diatonically consecutive, not chromatically consecutive. By creating a scale shape that mirrors these groupings, we can use the scale in a much more conscious and present way. So here's a 3-octave G major pentatonic scale using the dipper shapes. Now when you play this, I want you to keep track of where you are in the dipper shape. You're always either on a handle, which is your 3 consecutive notes, or you're on a scoop, which is your 2 consecutive notes. Alright, so here's the other cool thing. If you take this Big Dipper shape, you can move it to be in any key, but the fingerings for the melody will remain the same. All you have to do is make sure you're starting on a root note and check to see if you're crossing the B string, because if you are, you'll have to put a little jog in your scale. So for instance, if I wanted to use my dipper shape in the key of C, it would start here on a C note. If I wanted to use it in the key of D, it would start here on my open D string. Lastly, if I wanted to use it in the almighty key of G, I would start it on my open G string, but beware, I'm crossing my B string, so the scale will seem slightly offset, but it's the same pattern. So here's an example of how that's useful. If I learned the melody to Mary Had a Little Lamb, I can move it into any key, including keys which would use more open strings or less open strings. My fingerings will always be very similar. So here's Mary Had a Little Lamb, the key of G, C, and D. Okay, here's some good news. Bluegrass melodies like to agree with the underlying chord structure. So that means depending on which chord is currently happening, there's always going to be notes that are more likely or less likely to appear. The scale degrees in our pentatonic scale are 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. Common notes to hear over the 1 or G chord would be 1, 3, and 5. Common notes over the 4 or C chord would be 1 and 6. And common notes over the 5 or D chord would be 2 and 5. The reason why those notes are more common over those chords might already be obvious to you. The notes that are more common over a G chord are 1, 3, and 5. When you put 1, 3, and 5 together, you have a G chord. They're commonly used over those chords because they are parts of those chords. After that, it takes a little bit of educated guessing. So I'm going to show you a tune that I learned this way a couple of years back. It's a song called Julianne, and if you haven't heard it before, you can find Dole Lawson doing it. They have a great version. In fact, I think it's kind of their tune. So here we go. So my break to that tune might sound a little something like this. right? So most of it's the melody. I went a little bit off there at the end, but that's okay. Now, all of it exists within this scale, right? Which is one of our Big Dipper shapes. It's the one that starts on our G note. So when I went to find that first note of the melody, all I got to think is, all right, it's either going to be this note, or this note. The melody really going to want to start one of those places. And in this case, starts kind of up here. Right? Julianne, what are you doing? Making plans on leaving me. And I know that for that next part, I'm going to have to go over C chord. Plans on leaving me. Back to a G chord, so it's going to be one of our G notes. Works out. Next, we go to a D chord. Have I made your life unhappy? Have I made your life unhappy? It's all right there in a G chord. Is this how it's gonna be? How it's gonna be? From one of our C notes up to one of our G notes. Now when I play my break, I try to grab a lot of little pieces of those chords just to make it a little more interesting. So for instance, a lot of times if I'm playing over a G chord and the melody is one of these notes, this note or this note, I'll hold down this. If I'm playing over a C chord, my melody note's probably my G note in the case of this tune, so I can just hold down a whole C chord. If I'm playing over a D chord, my melody note's probably going to be this note. It's really common in bluegrass to sing that over a D chord, so I can hold down a little piece of a D chord right there. And that's how I think my way through most of these tunes. So there's a couple other notes you might come across in melodies, but I'm really only going to talk about one of them. In the key of G, your most common extra melody note would be a C note or your 4th degree. It appears at the end of the handle in our dipper shape and would most likely be included in a melody over the 4 chord or C chord in the key of G. Take for instance the melody of How Mountain Girls Can Love. It starts on our new note, which is the 4th degree, and it appears over the C chord or 4 chord. So with all that in mind, you should be able to find most bluegrass vocal melodies. Now here's the steps one more time of things you should keep in mind. Number one, you got to know what key you're in, and you got to be confident in that, right? None of this is going to work if you don't have the key. So once you know what key you're in, you can find that specific note and you can turn it into a dipper shape. Next, you should really know the chords to the song because the melody is going to reflect all of those chord choices. If you don't know the chords, you're going to have a hard time picking out which notes are going to be most common in which places. So this is the step that a lot of people have trouble with. You're going to have to make some bold guesses, and it's okay if you're wrong. If you want to start practicing this on your own, like at home when no one else is around, that's fine. Do that. It might even help you if you sing along to find those notes on your instrument. You can check your voice and make sure that things are working out okay. All right, cool. If you like taking a lesson from the biggest, baddest billy goat in the barnyard, there's a couple things you can do for me. Number one, you can scroll down, hit that subscribe button, and next to that is the bell icon. You can click on that if you want notifications for new videos. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. Just hit that like button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what I did right. Let me know what I did wrong. If you want more of me, you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Instagram, and you can find me on Twitter, where none of you follow me. Go follow me on Twitter right now. If you're interested in some licks, I run an account on Instagram called Jazz and Grass. That's daily licks every single weekday. You can also check out my website, lessonswithmarcel.com. There you can find a bunch of free stuff, and you can sign up for Skype lessons if you're interested. Anyway, I'll see you next time.